Hello, everyone. So I'm really glad to have you guys join us for the Career Advancement Summit. I just wanted to start off by saying, this is really about you today. Yeah, but obviously for us to be able to get the most out of it, you're going to need to do some things on your end too. So do minimize distractions. Please comment in the chat, share, your questions, share your comments, get involved in the discussions. That's what's really going to make it most impactful for you. Yeah, and just have fun. It's a casual session. It's not a job interview with panelists or anything. So just, be open to learning new things. Yeah. So great. So the first thing I'm going to ask everyone is, have you thought about what's next for you in your career? This is a very pertinent question, and it's actually what pins the Career Advancement Summit. It's getting clarity on what you're going to do next for your career. If there's one thing I think we've learned through Corona, it's that things that seem so certain sometimes are actually quite fragile. So similarly with our careers, we need to be more involved in them. We need to take our time and really think what's next for us. What do I need to do to prepare for a world where things are volatile, a world where things are always changing? Okay. Now, I want to start by introducing myself. I know not everyone on the call knows who I am. My name is Beryle, and I run Untitled Chapter. It's a company that I started in 2016. And what I focus on is helping people find and do meaningful work. So of course, the summit is really key to that, because the first thing that you need to do and find meaningful work is you need clarity. You need to be very clear about what it is that you want to do and what you need to do to get there. But another thing that is very important is you need connection. Yeah. So I provide that through other partners. So some of my partners will be on the summit during the various sessions. Today we'll be having 2 more sessions as an example, but it's basically connecting people to others who within the entire ecosystem of career development or personal development help you to do and find meaningful work. And it's also just connecting you to resources, that you need so you can be able to succeed. Because I don't believe I am the end all be all of wisdom. So obviously there's a lot that if we pull together, we can be able to get really meaningful value from. And then there's competence, and competence is not just in technical competence. I know in Kenya, when you say training, everyone just thinks about a technical course or something of that nature. But it's not that. It's more about the overall competence. One of the things you learn is actually technical skills are really important, but the future of work needs you to have much more than just technical skill. There's a lot of soft skill that's needed, even with senior leaders, and it's going to become more and more vital and more pertinent to your success. Yeah. And so that's what we do at Untitled Chapter. This entire summit is really a culmination of all these 3 things, and it's provided as a service. Great, Wycliffe, glad to hear. So it's provided as a service so that we can be able to give people the foundational knowledge that they need to be able to make the decision as to where they want to go, what resources they're going to need, and who they need to connect with together. Okay? So there are really 4 main things that are underpinning the future of work right now. Yeah, so of course, for my cover slide, everyone thinks of the future of work and everyone thinks about robots. Yeah, but the future of work is much more than that. There are really 4 things. I'm going to start off with globalization. Obviously, we live in a complete global village now. I don't think anyone doesn't understand this. But I think maybe what we don't appreciate sometimes is how much it affects us now, and it will affect us in the future. Because we live in a global village, just as an example, as an employer, I do not have to hire just from Kenya. I can hire from Uganda, I can hire from the Philippines, I can hire from Canada, I can hire from anywhere. Because we have globalization, it also means that I do not have to I don't have to search very hard to find certain skill sets. Yeah, there was a time when we were really focused on what was available locally. We didn't have the technology to be able to work across borders, but right now it doesn't really matter. We're able to do that, and so as a professional, you really have to ask yourself, what is, who really are you comparing yourself against? Is it really is it just Kenya? You're comparing yourself to the Kenyan market and what the Kenyan market has to offer, or you're thinking, what's the global market and what does the global market offer? What does the global market need? And so it's really a mindset issue that we need to focus on, to open up our horizons and broaden our perspective and think about just more than Kenya. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. In terms of, reskilling, as an example, reskilling is not just about technical skills. One of the fundamental issues that's being raised in the future of work is that people are not prepared to work, for example, remotely. And this is not necessarily just the professionals themselves, but even companies are not, designed really for the future of remote work or flexi work, and you can even just look at our companies now. We have a very lead by authority sense of leadership. So we lead people, we have authority over them, and therefore we get them to do what we want. But what happens in this case? Because the future of work looks like this. You're going to be a director somewhere. 90% of your workforce is not going to be permanent employees. They just will not, probably. And they will be working, some of them will be consulting for you. Some of them will be working only on project basis. Some of them will be part-time workers. They come in for 2-3 hours in the day and they leave. There's going to be very many different ways in which work looks than what it looks like now. So in a case like that, will leadership by authority, just because you as a boss, make it easier for you to lead people, make it easier for you to help the organization achieve what it needs to achieve? It's not going to work. And so there's a lot of discussions right now that even leaders themselves need to completely change their mindsets and shift their ways of working, So for professionals who may not be in leadership necessarily, this is something you really have to think about. So one of the things you need to think about is, how can I learn how to lead through influence, where I don't have direct authority over you. And I may not even have you on my team for any amount of time beyond this project. Those are skills that are really, really important now. And of course, that's in terms of remote and flexible working. This is a big thing now. I have clients who work for companies outside of Kenya remotely, and some of them work as contractors, some of them work as full-time employees. But it's a growing trend. It's a growing trend, and we see it a lot with in the technical services. So think IT type services or digital marketing or that sort of thing. But it's growing increasingly in other areas as well. And so we have to get used to this. We have to get used to what would it look like if the future meant that I work from home and I never meet my peers in the office. How would I work? How would I be able to be productive? Yeah, I hear a lot of people, saying, "Oh, after Corona, things are going to get back to normal." But the truth is, they're not going to get back to normal. I think Corona has firmly shown us that we have left normal, and now we are moving exclusively towards a very different paradigm. It's already been here with us. I think we just have not been as willing to keep up with it, and now we're being forced to change. So you have to also get into that mindset. What are you going to like that? may never achieve your clients. How are you going to be able to achieve the same things you are needed to achieve in that sort of environment? Yeah. So welcome, Wako. No, you're not late. You're not late. Okay. So in terms of AI and machine learning, I'm not going to get too much into this. I know there's a lot that is spoken of out there in terms of what we're expecting robots and machines will be able to do in future. But I really want to put it this way. If you really think about our work now, a lot of work is already being replaced by machines and robots. They may not necessarily be strolling the streets the way we see depicted in sci-fi, but they are part of the reason why we're able to outsource our work. They are part of the reason why we're able to automate certain processes in our jobs. And the thing is, it's not a trend that's going to stop. So the first place that scientists have been looking at over the last, let's say, 20 years is what we are seeing now. It's how do we automate task-based processes, things that don't really require much thinking, things that can be easily done by a machine with really good accuracy and speed. So that's what we're seeing now. But the next phase of AI and machine learning, which scientists are currently working on, is on machines that are able to extract what we would call empirical knowledge. What currently sits in your head that is very hard to explain. Why do you know how to do this so well? Those types of things. And then use it and develops processes and systems that allows it to be able to do exactly the same thing. So, for example, in medicine, with dermatologists, they found dermatologists who are so in tune with their practice that they're able to just look at your skin, and by looking at the bumps on your skin, they can tell whether it's cancerous or not. It's very hard for someone to explain, the process of how exactly they're able to do that. But scientists have been able to replicate the exact same thing, and now they have got, in dermatology, there are machines that can do exactly the same thing that these doctors can do. And it's not only there. But the thing is, they're also looking towards how they can build machines that can sit on boards. And there's already one robot that's already been ratified to sit as an official member of the board in a company in Japan. And the reason they said is because this machine is able to give better predictions. Now, I'm not going to go into too much of that, but it's just to give you a sense that it's not just about task-based processes, as many people think. There are many applications to the world of AI and the world of machine learning, and it's going to touch every facet of life, even things that we think are not really replicable, by a robot or by a machine. Yeah. Okay. So what do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about these 4 areas and how it affects you specifically? How do you see it affecting your line of work? How do you see it affecting your country? Okay, so Steve asks, is machine and robot replacing man not going to cause increase in unemployment? So there are two main camps to this. The first camp says yes, because of course they're going to take away some of the jobs that we are very used to performing ourselves, and make the bulk of where people are employed. And in that sense, yes. But there is another camp that says actually no, because it's going to free us up to be able to do more productive work. Really, I guess the thing is, it's going to be it's a future that is, even for scientists, uncertain. And everyone is trying to push the limits and see how much more powerful, how much more efficient, how much more resourceful their invention can be. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's going to be imperative for everyone to just see how that evolves for their own market. So Wanjiru, kindly. Okay, so Wanjiru asks, how do we compete in a globalized job market? So that's what we're going to talk about in the presentation. And I'm going to also go a little bit more into reskilling with Cliff as we go into the presentation. But just as a precursor, we're going to have a presentation at 3 p.m. today. And it's going to be by Doris Mwige, who's the country director of Shortlist, which is a recruiting firm here in Kenya. And she's going to be going into that also quite a bit. So please join us for that. So the question is, are we prepared? Yeah, are we in Africa prepared? So the World Economic Forum did a study, and the study is on human capital development, which just really means for us, it's just how prepared, are the people in Africa for this future of work. So as it stands currently, 83% of people in Africa are considered underemployed. Underemployment means that either you don't use all the hours you have within your work, so you work, let's say, part-time, 2 or 3 hours or 5 hours, and you could work 8, based on the study. Or it could also mean that your skills are not 100% utilized at your job. Yeah. So there are many variations to it, but except for South Africa, this was true for all countries in Africa. People are not utilizing all of the skills they have. Now, this may seem alarming, but when we really go into it, think about underemployment in terms of the future skills of work, and think about how many people then would be considered underemployed, or underskilled. In fact, only 6% of people were found to be highly skilled, So if you really think about that, then most people in Africa are generally at high risk of losing their jobs. They're at high risk of being replaced by an automation, being replaced by outsourcing. And those types of things are very, they're not really talked about much, but that's partly why we are having this summit. So just have a think about that. On the other hand, remote and flexible working is growing. Yeah, in Kenya, just the services that were able to track. So they tracked digital marketing and transcription, and people working in those areas. They found there were about 40,000 people. It's about 10 billion shillings annually in revenue that is derived from those types of services that are provided online on these types of job platforms like Upwork and those types of platforms. So it's big, but I know people may say that that's really just about that segment of the market, but no, remote and flexible working is happening even with higher level jobs. There are many people who work remotely as CEOs and MDs. But not only that, there are many people who work as contingent workers. There are many people who are also working as interim CEOs. It's growing. So basically, someone who just comes in for a specific amount of time to do a specific thing, maybe lead a company through change, and then they exit. So this is not uncommon. It's not something that's spoken about so much, I think, because we are in a market that really values full-time employment, and sometimes people who work, flexible jobs are, they almost feel like they're not meeting the societal, let me say, goal of having a full-time job. But there are many people who actually have these types of jobs, and as you come to see, they're not necessarily bad. But that's where the future is going, and we need to really think about it on a personal level. What are you going to do? Because this is where we are going. What are you going to do to be able to thrive? In terms of reskilling, some of the things that the report called out about Africa was that, number one, we have generalized skill, we don't have specialized skill. Generalized skill could be, you did an MBA in strategic management, okay? A specialized skill could be that you have an advanced diploma in machine learning. That could be an example. But the point is that with generalized skill, the future is not. It's not a good buffer for anyone for the future, because in the future people are going to be required to have very specialized skill. People are, having general knowledge is good, but it's not going to be able to secure you professionally. Another thing that we're very that came out of the report is that in Africa we have this notion that we should be paid on output. Now, by the way, when I say in Africa we have this notion, I don't mean that everyone has it. I'm speaking generally, but there's a pay on output mentality. I did the report and therefore I should be paid. I came to work and therefore I should be paid. I did the degree, therefore you should increase my salary. I attended the course and therefore I should get a promotion. That's the way we have traditionally looked at work. But what is going to be required for you moving forward is to think about being paid on productivity. You're going to have to deliver results. You're going to have to show how your report maybe spend less on this or that, different things, but you're going to have to really articulate clearly how you specifically bring value to the company, and that's how people are going to be paid. Because even if you just think about it practically, even on these services that you use like Uber Eats or Glovo, you're really just what we want to pay for is the productivity, the result. I don't know how many people will be comfortable paying for, if someone came and said, I showed up at the supermarket, and because I showed up, you should pay me X. And then I picked up the groceries, and because I picked up the groceries, now you should pay me X. And having not delivered anything to your door. So just think about it in the same way. It's going to have to really come to that. You're really going to have to develop an inclination towards being paid for productivity. And it's something you can actually start now, even in your current work situation. What is the result that your specific work needs to achieve for the organization? And go to your boss and have discussions based on that, Okay, if X happens, then Y happens. So if 2X happens, what then? Then I think that will really help to get you into that thinking. Cultural mobility. Cultural mobility is really focusing on being able to work in a global market with different cultures and with different ways of working and with different expectations, and yet be able to be productive within it. Because the future of work may look like, especially if you work for multinationals, it may look like you have a boss who's in Japan, you have a co-worker who's in Germany, you have a direct report who's in India, one who's in Australia, one who's in Kenya. This is the nature of what work is going to look like. So how are you going to be able to thrive in such a situation? And then, like we spoke about, leading by authority. Leading by authority is not going to cut it. Just having the say because you have the title is not going to be. It's not going to be the thing of the future. Like we said, most people are not going to be working full-time for the companies, or they may not be working full-time on the project you're on. They may not even be in your vicinity. There may be so many different factors you have to deal with. That leading by influence is one of the key skills of the future that people are going to have to learn. Okay. Yes, so Wycliffe, remote and flexible working does include working from home. yeah, it does include working from home. So the report said that this is increasing in Africa. A lot of people are working from home. A lot of people are working in interim jobs or working part-time, different things. So all classified inside that. Okay. So if you have any questions, please just drop them in the chat. I'll be able to see them as I go along. Okay. So what are the skills of the future? What are you going to be expected to really, really have? And these skills are the ones that most people agree, most researchers agree are really crucial, because they're, one, very hard to replicate, or they really differentiate and help you to maximize your leadership. Value creativity and innovation. Creativity and innovation here is speaking about bringing new things, or taking ideas that have already been implemented and being able to customize them and being able to execute them in a way that makes sense to your current situation. Yeah. So creativity is it also works outside of leadership. One of the other ways that it works is, there are things that robots cannot really replicate. A machine cannot replicate that value, that intrinsic value you hold in someone saying, I made this by hand for you. So that's something that you can't really replicate through technology. And so that's not one reason, by the way, if you see many African governments really pushing for the creative industries to be built and to grow, that's one of the reasons. It's because they recognize that this is an area that is hard to replicate and that offers opportunity for many people. Another thing, of course, is networking. Personal relationship, people relationship will always be important. We've seen many countries, not many countries rather, but we've seen many innovations around automating certain processes. For example, in sales, automating someone going to the shop floor and putting goods on the shelf, using robots like Amazon does. Those types of things, yeah, that's possible to automate. But people still want to speak to people. People still want to relate to people. And so having those skills are going to be so important, so crucial for your posterity. As a leader, that means that you're going to have to get really good in terms of communication. Yeah, you're going to have to get really good in staying abreast of what's going on and what's relevant in your industry, what's relevant to your country, what's relevant globally. It's not going to be a nice to have skill. This is going to be a skill that's going to be very important for us. So at the back of our minds, it's something we need to really think about. Am I really making the effort to really grow in that area, or is it just am I getting by? I know the people in my industry, I know the people in my company, and that's currently enough. Yeah, but it isn't, as we've come to see. In terms of digital skills, this is different for different people at different levels. When you're starting off, you're really going to have very good understanding of technical, the doing side of things. Right now, globally, they estimate that there's at least a 500,000 manpower gap in machine learning and in AI currently as it stands in 2020. But it also is growing, and there are also many other things that are coming up, new skills and new competencies that are needed. So you have to really think about that if you're starting out in your career. As you're going higher, of course, it's not going to be about the tactical issues. It's really going to be strategic. So one of the things that you'll find you're asked about a lot is how you're going to be able to lead a company through change. And they're expecting to hear how you can be able to build more, posterity for the company through digital platforms and things like that, it's going to be a really big issue, going forward in your interviews and whatnot. So those are the types of things now that you would really need to be thinking about. Are you adequately skilled to even lead, even if it's a department? Are you adequately skilled to be able to lead your department towards this new future that's coming? And can you be able to translate these new strategies and these new ways of thinking and these new ways of working into a way that makes it productive for the company? So one of the questions I'd ask, and you can just let me know in the chat. I hear a lot of people saying, I can hardly wait for Corona to end so that people can come back to the office and I can finally make sure they're doing work. But do you think that that's really the problem? Or do you think that the problem is that we've never built structure to help people to work remotely, to help people be productive without us having to directly have authority over them and, monitor everything that they're doing? Yeah, so let me know in the chat. And good judgment. Good judgment really speaks to wisdom. I'd call it wisdom. There are things that come through experience, and those are really hard to replicate. So that's why some jobs really do require that you have experience. And those types of things are really hard to replicate through in the future work outside of, people. There's something that someone who has got 30 years experience working in can do that I can't be able to do, if I only have 5 years experience in that, So those types of things are, I think, what we really need to think about, how we're going to be able to thrive in that. So I am told of this situation in GE and General Electric, and one of their machines was breaking down, and one of the engineers, after they had really tried, and one of the engineers said, no, let's call this guy who used to work here and let him tell us, what is wrong. And the guy came in, he looked at this machine, he went around, and all these engineers, it said, were just walking around behind him and trying to figure out what he was doing. And then let me know if you can see my screen. I can see some people are saying they can't see the screen. Yeah, but so they all followed him around this machine. And when they got to the other end of the machine, the guy wrote on a piece of paper what they should do, and they agreed he'd send them the bill. So he sent them a bill for $10,000. And they were up in arms and, oh, it's so expensive. How can you charge us so much? $10,000. Thanks, Samuel, that Okay. So if you can't see the screen, just reload. Maybe there's something up with the internet or something. So the guy sends back a note and he says, okay, $1 is for telling you what the part was, but the other 9,999 was because I know what part you needed. Yeah. So obviously that's judgment. Yeah. And that's not something that's easily replicable. So yeah, so definitely building experience in things, but reading widely, being willing to experiment. You're going to have to be willing to experiment. You're going to have to be willing to fail. I know if you've seen a lot of presentations, especially by in the digital side of things, people talk about failing fast, but you're going to have to be willing to try things, and you're going to have to fail sometimes, but you're going to have to learn from those failures. It's going to be the norm. It's just going to be the norm of a more fast-paced world. Imagine how fast-paced the world is in some countries, but imagine it's getting faster, really. Okay. So let's see. So Elizabeth says, I think the micromanagement has played a big role in this. Managers don't trust people to work with minimal supervision, which in my opinion is extremely counterproductive. Okay. Yeah. Micromanagement. Stephanie says, we've never built structures that enable staff to work from anywhere. Currently, my manager says if they can't see you, you're not working. Okay. All right. And Yvonne says, empowering employees on their tasks and how they contribute to the organization's KPIs will motivate them to work remotely without supervision. Very interesting. So I do agree. There are some cases where, yes, some people feel that way. If they don't have people seated in a room and they can't monitor exactly where, what it is that is on your screen and that sort of thing, then for sure you're probably not working, which, is it is counterproductive. But it's also counterproductive on the employee side. I think sometimes we do give people the impression that if they don't have their hand over us, that we won't be able to work, we won't be able to be productive. But I think it goes both ways. But let me speak to you because you're the one who's here. Your company is not the one that's sponsoring this summit. I think if you take ownership of your work and you just start to display independence and deliver when you say you'll deliver, people tend to start to leave you alone and let you get on with the business or whatever it is that you're doing, because they know you're going to deliver. The problem is if you're asking for independence and your history has always been not delivering or inconsistently delivering, I think that becomes an issue. But I think as a leader, you have to also make those, you have to slowly push people towards this new way of thinking. People have to get used to, okay, I'm going to have to do this task, and Beryle is not going to be checking up on me every 5 minutes. It's going to be my responsibility to come to Beryle when I need it, and I'm going to have to structure what it is that I require, from her. It's not just about, basically it's helping people to get into that productive mindset. It's not just about having meetings and just about, constantly being monitored and filling in KPI dashboards. It's really about productivity. It's what we're trying to do. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but I think also, I agree, Yvonne. It's also about sharing what it is that's expected of people. But let's say you're in an organization where your manager doesn't feel like they need to share things with you. They don't feel like you need to know, just do as I say. I think that even then you can still take ownership of your work. Deliver with what you have and ask questions. As you ask questions, you will have certain things revealed to you, why we do things this way or why we can't be able to do that way. But it's in the process of doing something, I think, that you open up doors. But if we don't make the effort on a personal level to do things, to try new things, or to commit to things and actually get them done, it becomes very difficult to tell someone to entrust us with more. Yeah. Okay. So, at this level, I just want to tell you a story. One of my friends works in Safaricom and she works in customer care. And about 4 years ago, I think, probably 4 years ago, we were having this discussion, and Bob Collymore was the then CEO. He's now passed away. For those who may not be in Kenya, I don't know. So Safaricom is one of the larger telecom communications company in Kenya. So one day, Bob Collymore walks into the call center. At that time, there were about 600 employees. It's a massive, massive center on Mombasa Road. And he walks up to the podium and he's addressing them. And after all the niceties, he tells them, "You're not going to work here very long." And of course, everyone was, "What has he just said? Are we being fired?" It just sounded so off, obviously. But then he said, "You're not going to work here very long because the kind of work you do, it's not the kind of work that's going to be here forever. It's not going to be here forever. There is going to come a time when this work will not be here any longer. And you have to take what Safaricom has given you and you have to start thinking about yourself. And you have to start thinking about where you're going to go if this all falls through." Yeah. And honestly, really just respected that. That sort of honesty is really hard to share with people. It's a very hard thing for a leader to have to walk up to his team member and say, we are making you redundant, or we have to close this operation, and you will not have your jobs next year or 2 years from now. It's not an easy thing. But I appreciate not only that he was basically saying that one day that could be the reality for them. What he was basically saying is that there is better for you, and you need to own your success. You need to own your own development. It's not always going to be about you can't always just think about just Safaricom as a secure employer and that sort of thing. Certain things sometimes can come to an end. Yeah. And so with that, I just want to ask you a question. If you think about where you are right now, are you an automation, outsourcing, or project away from being made redundant? If there was a way to do something, is it possible for you to be made redundant now? And think about it honestly. This is more a rhetorical question, but just think about it honestly. Is it possible that you could be made redundant? Okay. So in terms of recruiting, that too is changing. We are seeing that there's going to be increased competition because, of course, you're competing with people on a global level now for the exact same job that you have. Expect that your recruiting process will have many assessments because they will be assessing your technical skill, your soft skill, they'll be assessing your fit for working remotely and things like that. And with AI and machine learning and ATS, so applicant tracking systems are basically AI and machine learning that's currently in use in the recruiting world to help to filter candidates and to help to get the candidates they feel are, based on whatever they have programmed into the system, the best suited. So even when you're applying now, probability is that it's the machine you're trying to impress first before you actually get to speak to an actual human recruiter. So what that could look like is you could end up in a process like this. You could be starting by submitting your CV or your LinkedIn profile. Then you have a skill assessment, a technical skill assessment. Then you have a cognitive assessment. So if you've ever done those assessments where they're like, what is the next shape in this series of 5? So those types of things are cognitive assessments. And those are really increasingly being used globally, even here in Kenya. And we will be covering this on Wednesday at 1 p.m. We'll be going into a lot of detail about assessments and what they're used for and what you need to know about them. You could be interviewed by a chatbot. So if you've probably done an application on Shortlist, you've seen they have this sort of technology now. It asks you questions about your experience, and out of your response to those questions, it decides whether or not you should be moved forward into the next stage of the interview process. Then you have mobility tests. Mobility tests are, can this person work remotely? Can they be productive remotely? If you're front-facing, you may be, if you're going to have to meet your shareholders, you're going to have to meet your stakeholders, they would need you to do accent or speech tests so that they can be able to see, can I understand your accent? Because we'll all be coming from different parts of the world. But can I understand your accent? Is it clear the way you speak and things like that? You could have a job test. So maybe you'll be told, I will hire you for 1 month, so not 3 months, 6 months probation. I'll hire you for 1 month on this particular project. And if you deliver the results, then we will proceed to hire you. Then maybe that's when now you would finally have a proper screening interview and in-person interviews with your team members and your teammates and maybe the board of directors, whatever. And that's now when you would be firmly, in the company. So basically in recruiting in the future, it's not going to be as straightforward as it is now. Yeah. And that's also because of, just think about it, the efficiency. If you open up to a global market, even if, for example, a job is opened up right now to the rest of Africa, if in Kenya, the typical managerial job is getting 500 applications, can you imagine what people would need to deal with? Lots. So they would have to find ways to, synthesize all that information in a way that's efficient and quick. I've actually gone through a process a little bit similar to this when I was applying for a certain position. And you'd think this would take a month, you'd think it would take 2 months, 3 months. It just looks like it will go forever. But actually, the company had designed it in such a way that this entire process could be done in exactly 1 week, and you would know whether you had passed in exactly a month. So they would have a job test for 2 weeks, and they would train you. Then you'd have a job test for 2 weeks. So at the end of the month, you knew if you had made it through or you hadn't made it through. So let's say I was going back, I'm going back into employment, and what would I do? Let's just make it practical. So a little bit about me. I used to work in what's called client services. So it's managing the relationship of the organization with its clients. And I worked for a consumer research firm, one of the global firms. And my clients were spread all over Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So I had clients in, for example, Dubai. Then I had a client in Sweden. So you're used to this type of thing. In a multinational, you tend to have this type of structures. Now, say I was looking for a new job. Okay, I just wasn't feeling like this is where I want to be, and I'm trying to analyze what to do next. The first thing I would do is analyze what's going on a global scale with my job and on a local scale. And then I would look at the industry that I work in, and I would look at the organization. So starting off with the global and local. Even if you just go into your Google search bar and you just type in the future of work, marketing research, or the future of work, general management, the future of work, operations management, you're going to see reports that have been done, studies that have been done that illustrate what is to be expected for your specific area of work. Yeah, so do that after the call. But I would do that. So I would go in and I would look and see what are the opportunities, what are the risks that are also being, said there. So one of the things for marketing research is there's a greater need for digital skills. Traditional marketing research relies on the fact that, in the area that I worked in, which was in retail research, it relies on physical stores, it relies on physical presence. But now we are having more and more business going online. There's more and more e-commerce happening online. So we're requiring people in marketing research to have better digital skills. We need more distributed workforces, because we are not going to be able to hire everyone. There was a time when marketing research, had so many employees, and of course the staff that's outsourced to work, for example, doing the research on ground, quite a number of people. But it's not going to just be that way anymore. I can live in Kenya and be doing research for India, seated right here in Kenya. So there's going to be a lot more distributed workforces. And then there's an increase in contingent jobs. Contingent is really what we're talking about with flexible and remote working and interim working and that sort of thing. That's becoming more commonplace globally within market research. But another thing is in industry here locally, this also holds true. There have been a lot of, there have been cases of layoffs in research firms locally. There's been a lot of automation of processes within research firms. And so they're cost cutting, and there's rationalization. Yeah, rationalization meaning we are cutting down on staff, for example, staff rationalization. And it's because everyone is trying to be more efficient. Your clients, there's a client attrition means that they're losing clients. Huh? So you're losing clients, and you're losing clients because clients want competencies that you may not necessarily have now, or it's becoming less important what you provide, and yet you have to keep running. You're going to have to, the only logical thing that remains for many companies is to cut on the staff, because cutting on the investments they need is really difficult. These are things they had to invest in upfront. So then there's lower budgets, yeah, and many clients also want to do research internally. Yeah, they don't want to pay for every focus group. They don't want to pay for every in-depth interview that you do. They want to take some of this work in-house. What are you going to do when your clients want to spend less, don't want to buy the core services that you are offering, and yet you've already invested. Yeah, so you can see the industry is in one of those catch-22 situations, which is kind of funny if you really think about it. It's they're telling clients about how to prepare for the future of consumer spending and the future of consumer needs and wants, but it's funny how sometimes we are looking so much into the future for others, and then we are not thinking about ourselves. And that's kind of like what happens with even us as employed professionals, right? Yeah, and then I would look at opportunities. Yeah, so I would say, okay, what opportunities are there? So in 2015, I was called by a recruiter for an organization called Michael Page, and he wanted to interview me for a remote position. My boss would be sitting in Dubai. It was a media organization, a global media organization. And it was exactly what I was doing, though it was not in research. It was in media. It was exactly what I was doing. And inevitably, one of the questions that comes up when you're doing these types of interviews is, how much do you want to be paid? And so I had read somewhere, this was the time when I was doing a lot of self-exploration, and I read somewhere that you're not supposed to answer this question directly. And so I didn't answer the question directly, but I put it back to the recruiter. And in our discussion, he let me know that the job was going to be paying in the band of 5 times what I was currently earning to around 8 times what I was currently earning. Guys, I don't even know how, to this date, I don't know how my phone didn't fall off my hand. I was shocked. I don't know if this has happened to anyone. Yeah, if this has ever happened to you, just let me know in the chat. But I was so shocked that exactly what I was, but it wasn't even exactly what I was doing. It was less than what I was doing. Doing less than what I was doing was going to get me more if I changed industries. I didn't even know this, and so sometimes if we don't explore what's out there, we think that we have the very, very best. And I'm not talking about salaries. I'm talking even just about your personal fulfillment. Do you know what other industries are doing? How could you transfer your skills to another industry? If you don't know, you may find there's a really good fit for you out there that you just don't think about because it's not linear. It's just not linear. So anyway, I could say my opportunities are to stay put. I could change to a different profession, so a different industry, say media. I could specialize, so maybe I could decide to do digital marketing. I could go and work for my clients. I could work remotely for an organization completely outside of Kenya, completely different continent, whatever. I could go into private consulting. I think everyone has many opportunities. Everyone has many opportunities. And then I would just rank them, on an honest scale, and just rank like what is it that's most important to me? What are these factors? And then I would rank them, and I would pull that out, and I would say, these are the ones that I'm really going to pursue. Yeah, or this is the one that I'm really going to pursue. So let's say I was looking at I've picked changing to media. Okay, so I do, I would look at my strengths and my weaknesses. So I do have internationally recognized qualifications, but they're not qualifications in emerging specialties. So maybe I'll find that in media, they really need me to have better digital communication skills. I don't really have those types of qualifications. I may find that I have a wide local network, but my network is consisting of other people in marketing research like me. But if I want to move out to another industry, I'm really going to have to start building those connections. So maybe I want to work remotely. I have a small global network, I may find that my professional profile, whatever it is that says what I want to do is not even aligned to the work that I want to do. So your professional profile could be your CV, it could be your LinkedIn profile, etc. I'm going to stop here and talk a little bit about your LinkedIn profile. So if you have a LinkedIn profile and your LinkedIn profile is talking about the job you currently do, it's doing a disservice to you. Your LinkedIn profile should be speaking about the job you are looking to. Yeah, because when someone is recruiting for a job, they are actually looking for someone who displays experience in what they need to solve in-house. That's if you think about it from an employer's perspective, that's the most surefire way they know to figure out whether someone has the abilities to perform the job. Yeah, because otherwise they'd have to rely on your word alone. So your LinkedIn profile, whatever it is, at least have your headline pointing towards what it is that you are looking towards. Yeah. So let's say I'm in marketing research and my headline says market researcher, but I actually want to move to account management in media. I would change my title to account manager media or something of that nature, because that would be more, I'm more likely to be found in that sense, and I'm more aligned to what I'm looking for there. Yeah. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope that was useful to you. In some way you were able to get something. You can let me know in the chat box as well. Okay, so Arthur says, I am also in agreement with the sentiment that we need to come to a point of being paid on productivity basis rather than output. Currently in our department, we are required to log in the morning and out in the evening simply because we are working from home. Yeah. And Arthur, it's absolutely true. We are coming to that point. And one of the things that is funnily enough going to be becoming more and more commonplace is these types of systems where you log in your hours, you're not in the office, but it records when you logged into your computer. There are some that even record when you've changed tabs. So if you're supposed to be doing something on one tab and you change, it will record that and you won't be paid for that hour that you were doing whatever else you were doing on that tab. I mean, work is changing, and some things are not going to be enjoyable, but we're not here to tell ourselves what we want, about what we would like. Unfortunately, things are changing, things are becoming more complex, I would say, and you have to change in line with those things. The world isn't going to change for us. We are going to have to change to meet the world as it's going where it's going, right? So I know logging those systems, they're not the friendliest things, and it feels intrusive, but it is where things are going. But if you think about it from where the employer is coming from, what they're really saying is, as Arthur has said, what they're really saying is, I want to pay you on productivity. I don't want to pay you based on output. That's really what they're getting at. So once you get to that understanding, it's really going to change a lot of things. Okay, so Kimathi says, what is the best way to answer the question and how much you think you should be paid at an interview? Oh, that's a great question. And I would want you to join us on Wednesday and on Thursday, because we're going to go into a lot of detail there. And I wouldn't want to spoil it. Yeah, but there's definitely a good way and a bad way. Tabiness says, oh, thank you, Tab. It felt like I was in an MBA class. So informative. All right, I'm glad to hear. Thank you for joining us. Steve, it was very useful. Next time, we get participation certificates. All right, Steve, I hear you. Atieno, thanks for your insights on positioning yourself for the job you want. Lucia, I've learned a lot. Presentation was awesome. Okay. Magdalene asks, I have a question. How do you put your preference in your LinkedIn bio without misleading future employers? You're not misleading. Remember, think about your LinkedIn profile like your personal website. Okay? Yeah. And your personal website should really be telling people, when they look at it, what it is you're looking for in the first place. Yeah. It shouldn't be telling, it's not a report card, this is what I have been doing. This is what I am currently doing, and this is the kind of way I can help you. That's really what you should be thinking of your LinkedIn profile as. So when you're looking at your LinkedIn profile, which you'll get into more in those other 2 days, as I said, when you're going into your LinkedIn profile, you're really looking more into how you're speaking to the needs of that employer. That's this new employer. Yeah. So just as an example, in marketing research, I'll have to, being on the client service side, I will have to generate revenue. Yeah, I will have to meet with clients. I have to do reports. I have to do this different things. So say I was moving to a different industry. Yeah. Say I was moving to media. Media is not going to be, in media, they're not going to be as interested in the fact that I was doing research reports, but maybe they would like to hear that I have built account plans, where I've been able to structure how we would manage our clients and that sort of thing. So that would be more interesting than talking about how I need to prepare, how many research reports I did and the kind of impact it had in the research world for my clients. I would need to change that in a way to suit what the people in media will be looking at. I hope that answered your question. But it's not misleading at all. You're not saying this is my current job. You're saying this is what I want to go and do. This is where I want to position myself. And that's something you put in your LinkedIn headline. Your LinkedIn headline is not the title of your job. Those are two different things. Your LinkedIn headline is literally like, this is the title of this website. Let me put it that way. Yeah. And it's separate. If you go in the back end of your profile, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. So thank you. So no, I hope I've answered your question somewhat, and I will be going into a bit more detail in my talk on Wednesday and Thursday, so do join us. Okay, so Wilson, I'm not sure, what do you mean by essential skills, the future of essential skills? Maybe I could try and understand that a bit. Yeah, so Joyce says managers are forced to monitor because in my experience, some people spend time on the social network. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I remember working somewhere once and I had this workmate who would come in very early and then at exactly 10 a.m., he was completely done with his work and he would spend the entire day on Twitter. So yeah, I totally understand that. Yeah, but it's really, I think about it more in terms of yourself, because this presentation is not about your employer or how your manager manages. It's more about you, the person, and it's about how you're going to be able to build your own next. How you're going to be able to manage your own career so that it's not difficult for you. It's not a struggle. That's really what this presentation is about. Yeah. So guys, I just want to thank you so much for joining us. Okay, Wilson, example of essential can be education or medicine. Okay, I hear you. So Wilson, just to go back on what I'd said earlier, the first part of, when people talk, because I know you're kind of alluding to AI and machine learning. So the first part of AI and machine learning was on, routine tasks, things that don't require much, let me say, they don't really require as much thinking. They're routine things that you can get done. That was the first part of AI and machine learning. And that's what we're seeing being executed now is actually out of all of the research that's been done and all of the, programs that have been built to meet that need. And so how does this pan out for us? We see it in outsourcing. We see it in, working remotely. But for example, in medicine, we see telemedicine. Yeah, I think if you're in Kenya the other day, we were seeing how we were able to have a doctor in one place and the doctor could give, diagnosis for different patients across the country because we have very few specialists anyway. So those are some really good and definitely things that have been done. But the second level of AI and machine learning is going into, what we would call foundational knowledge, things that are very hard to replicate. So for example, in medicine, one of the ways that we are seeing this has happened is they did this study. Yeah, they got some dermatologists, very experienced in their field. These guys are so experienced that they just have to look at your face and look at the bumps on your face, and they can be able to tell whether it's cancerous or not with 100% accuracy. That's just amazing. So they got these people and they started using machine learning to try and figure out, because can you imagine someone like that trying to teach you what they do so they can be able to understand, to diagnose it? It's very hard. But what they did is they built some machine learning processes and they were able to come up with an algorithm that now is able to tell people is able to predict with very good accuracy the exact same thing that people who have worked for 30, 40 years are able to do then. So you understand that it's evolving all the time. It's so different for everyone. And that's why I was saying that I would start off by just going to Google, type in future of work medicine, future of work education, and you'll see there's so many articles and there's so much research that's going on and that's explaining what this could look like for all of us. And it's going to be different for everyone. And some predictions will come to pass, I'm sure. Some may not come to pass, or they may not affect us as fast as other places or faster. But it's just good to have that mental preparation. This is where things are going towards. And therefore, I need to be prepared for that. Yeah. So Anjuru, yes, there are going to be. So I'm hoping at least even if you didn't really feel prepared for the future of work, I think I'm hoping that the presentation was able to give you some insight as to what you could do next. But over the next couple of days, we'll be going into a lot of detail, a lot of insight will be shared about that by different experts. So please join us. And I'm going to wish you guys the very best to the rest of your day and see you soon. Bye.